Hey everybody, JJ here, back again with another Saturday of Zoom networking. And man, do we have a great call in store for you today. We have an absolutely amazing young lady with an amazing topic that everyone needs to know about. Our guest speaker is out of Pace Morby Sub 2 community. Like the rest of us, started as a student, become an entrepreneur, not only experienced investor, but just a rock star in her field with a ton of value to share today. I'd like to introduce my good friend Melissa Palmer. Mel, how are you?
All right. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Hey, for those that don't know you, where in the country are you located?
I'm in Monterey, California.
Beautiful. It's beautiful up there. I've actually driven through. Is that where Clint Eastwood used to be the mayor, or is that Carmel?
Carmel. Yeah, that's Carmel.
But
Very
still
close. I mean, it's Monterey.
very,
Further.
very beautiful up there. So, hey,
Yeah.
let me ask, we're both in sub two. And what did you do before I became a real estate investor?
Yeah, so I'm still in the military, but I was active duty Air Force for 12 years. I just hit 17 years switching over to the reserves, and while I was in the Air Force, I was a federal agent. So I did our special investigations, and toward the end, I actually came out to Monterey, California to learn Mandarin and then do export enforcement. And so I was working with Homeland Security and Department of Commerce doing our like front company investigations, export violations, export enforcement. And so that's that's my professional background is a lot of military intelligence and military investigations or federal
Wow.
investigations rather.
So, needless to say, you're sharp as a needle. How did you get into real estate? What brought you in? And how did you discover Pace?
Yeah, so I started investing in real estate in 2009. I lived in Vegas at the time, and 2009, if we remember, was rock bottom of the market. Vegas was actually one of the worst hit markets in the country. And so, using my VA loan, it was kind of an easy entry into real estate. It's zero down, is the official original zero down mortgage option. And when you're buying property for $100,000, the mortgage is way cheaper than rent. And so, using my VA benefits, I was able to get into real estate starting then. And I was totally like HGTV mindset, just doing cute little projects, and paint was like the value add that I offered to my first property. A couple other little backyard projects and totally HGTV level little stuff. Nothing
Cool.
crazy. That's where I started.
So, now how'd you find out about Pace?
Yeah, so 2020, I um found out and was it 2020, 2021? I don't whatever. It was like January, whatever. I found out right after I got out of the military. I continued to um invest. I had a property in Hawaii that I already did a kind of fix and hold situation that I was renting out, and I bought a cabin in Big Bear, California that I Airbnb'd, still have it. And I kind of maxed out my what I could do with my VA loans. I wasn't willing to house hack again and get into property with my VA loan. I didn't have any more cash because I dumped it all into my cabin. And then I wasn't really qualified for mortgages like I was when I was active duty. So I started, finding creative finance. And of course, the algorithm got me, and that's how I found Pace. A bigger
Fantastic.
pockets. It was a bigger pockets interview that he did. That's how I
Okay.
found him.
Well, your topic today is due diligence for private lending.
Yeah.
And, lending is the big topic right now. There's a whole Gator, organization, Gator Lending. A lot of people that aren't even in Pace's community are talking about lending. There's a whole bunch of Facebook groups out there for real estate people that are looking into lending. So lending is a hot topic now. But a lot of people are lending money and they're not double checking things. They're not making sure they have the right paperwork in place. They're not doing their due diligence. So
Yeah.
your topic today is due diligence for private lending. We have some new people on the call, and we'll have new people watching on YouTube weeks and months down the line. Could you explain to us what due diligence is?
Yeah. So short answer is it depends, right? But long answer, so we'll get to due diligence for lenders last. What I'll start with is when you do due diligence, I guess, when you're doing due diligence, the first step is just looking at a traditional acquisition. Traditional acquisition due diligence is going to be an appraisal and an inspection, maybe a call to the county if you plan on doing something to the property. The end. That's it. The bank is doing all the rest of the work. So they're going to deny you or qualify you based on their lending criteria, and it's very cut and dry.
So
Traditional.
if someone's a new lender or a new investor and they want to look into participating in some kind of an investment opportunity, part of their due diligence is making sure that that deal is even worth it, right?
Correct. Yeah. And so then I'll take it in another step, right? So that's a traditional purchase. The next step would be like an investor and maybe some sort of creative acquisition. You need to underwrite. You need to make sure that there's cash flow involved with this. So you'll still want that appraisal, you'll still want that inspection, and you'll also want underwriting because the bank's no longer doing it for you. You're doing it. It's probably either a creative acquisition or a maybe a hard money lender, and they'll have some underwriting criteria, but it is on you to be able to pay that and on you to make sure that's a cash flowing asset. And so when you're buying as an investor, there's a little more due diligence. And then I would, say even further is when you're a lender, now you're looking as the person who is creating all the underlying criteria that the bank originally would have in that traditional acquisition. And so you have to remember that the banks have processes. And if you want to be the bank, you better have some processes and
Mhm.
underwriting and due diligence and comping and all of these other elements um, rely so much more than like you need to rely on actual information, not just the know, like, and trust factor, not just the underwriting, but
Mhm.
the whole picture, the full person concept, right? Whole person concept and the whole deal, and then the actual verified information. Because what you'll find is investors will always present something as the best version of that
Mhm.
story,
Mhm.
and they do not do the um, conservative figures that you need to protect your money.
They give you
Since
the best case scenario.
yes, that's right, they're going for the best case scenario.
So
Um,
let me ask you, and again, I want to kind of open this up a little bit because some people don't know what we're talking about. What is comping and what is underwriting? You've mentioned each of these terms a couple times. Some of us know exactly what they are.
yeah.
But for those that are new, what is comping and what is underwriting?
Yeah, so first of all, really important to understand that they're different, right? Second, they are complementary. They work together. So you do want to know how to do both of them. And then to answer your question, the difference is comping is going to be the market value of that asset. And that's going to fluctuate based on the market, based on the timing, based on the improvements that are or are not done to the property. And then you have your underwriting, which is cash flow analysis. And that is looking at how much money you are actually making after your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, after your
Mhm.
property management, after your vacancy and maintenance costs. And then that final figure is going to be the little bit of green or possibly the red that is going to be your cash flow or your comping, or
So,
rather your underwriting.
so the phrase comping actually comes from comparables, comparing
That's
one
right.
property to another. And then,
Yeah,
we have a couple people on the call today that started Wiley a couple years ago from Tualatin, Oregon. They're a power couple in Sub 2. But when Stephen and Carolina Allen, but when I started way back in Fortune Builders, they didn't use the term underwriting. They used the term deal analyzer.
that's right. Yeah. I
So
think
it,
deal analysis is more appropriate because it's including multiple things. People get so used to saying underwriting, 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 and it's like that's not enough. You need to do full deal analysis, and that's looking at feasibility, that's looking at timing, at security, at the underwriting, at the comping. Like that's just five things. There's more, right? So
so what's the best way for the new investor to get a little bit more savvy at due diligence for if they want to be a lender? What's some of the things they want to look at or look for or
yeah, I mean, you hit on this a lot in all of your training, which is actually getting out there, actually talking to people, actually making relationships. At the end of the day, I think you need to get your reps in. You can sit behind a computer and you can do this stuff all day, but really, um, once you're actually talking to people, once you're actually sussing out the information, and that's why, I say it's not just the deal, it's not just the person, but it's the verified information. There's three parts to due diligence, and it is the information because you can look at something online and you can take it at face value, but that doesn't make it true. So you can do deal analysis on that surface level information provided to you all day. It does not mean you did your due diligence. It means you took the numbers that you were provided from a very optimistic or possibly nefarious individual
Hmm.
and analyzed that, and that's not safe,
Uh,
and that's not due
we
diligence.
know those nefarious individuals are out there.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
do you see any common mistakes that some of the newer investors make?
Oh, yeah. Yes. So when you are a lender, the biggest mistake I see people make is lending on a sub two. I will tell you why you don't lend on a sub two. Um, that is because a good sub two has no equity. Equity is the only thing that is going to protect a lender. Like that almost always is going to crush a new lender because they're going to think, oh, I'm secure. I've got an asset. I can take it over. And it's like, there's an underlying mortgage that's in first position. Are you going to take that over? No, you need to structure different deals with these. That's going to be one of those JV agreements. JV agreement, I will say, is number two failure that I see for new lenders because they think, hey, just because I'm on a JV agreement, I'm good. Well, what if it's a negative cash flowing asset and they expect you to come up with the funds for it? What if they're not paying that underlying mortgage and the only way you can take over this asset is if you pay back that underlying mortgage, like default that, maybe $10,000 of unpaid um, arrears and now have to take a non-cash flowing asset, right? So number two is JV agreements. I would say number three is something else we see very common, which is a wrap. A wrap to me, more often than not, is just a bad deal. That's all it is. It's a really bad deal. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to buy it. And so they think they're going to make it a good deal by wrapping it, but they're an inexperienced buyer or wholesaler that thinks they're going to be able to just simply wrap this property and they don't
Wow.
have the network to be able to actually fulfill that promise. And so they are the most criminal of the people that will sit on an asset for 6 months, not pay the underlying mortgage, not market it properly, and not actually get to sell it on a wrap. And so they not only screw over the sub two buyer or seller rather, but they also are screwing over the lender that's usually sitting there waiting for this wrap deal to go through and for them to get their money
Wow.
back plus their interest. So
Wow. I hear so many guys talking about doing wraps, and so this is a whole new perspective and very enlightening.
they are possible, but that's where the due diligence comes in to verify somebody's background, education, experience. Like, do you have proof of performance in actually executing a wrap, or are you just taking on all these bad deals, calling them a wrap, and getting all these lenders on board just to sit there and drag them? Because that's usually what happens. And those are the three deals that I always see go sour for lenders. Is they'll have like a 90-day timeline or a 6 month timeline, and you 9 times out of 10 that balloon hits at 90 days or 6 months
Yep.
and they're in trouble,
There
everyone.
you go. There you go. Hey, in a minute, I'm going to want to ask you about some of the basic documents that the new lender's going to need. We've got Rob Howdy with us. Rob, you're on with Mel Palmer. What's your question?
Hey, JJ. Hey, Mel. Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
nice to meet you.
Hey, a quick question on the JV agreement. I'm a brand new investor. I haven't done a deal yet. But when that comes about, when we're talking about JV agreements, I mean, it makes it sound so simple. Just get a JV agreement and you're buttoned up. That's obviously not the case. I mean, how much more do I need to go beyond that?
So much more, so much more. Okay, so there are two resources that I have. One is free, one is paid, and it's actually in development right now, so I don't think I've got a couple people testing it out right now that were early adopters. But the free one is you go to my Instagram and you comment partner on any of my posts, and
Mhm.
I'll send you 25 questions to ask before getting into a JV agreement. And these are questions about roles and responsibilities. These are questions about asset management. These are questions about finances and capital contributions and what happens if some sort of emergency happens and capital contributions need to be made. If you're the initial capital and you're a 50% equity holder because you signed your JV agreement that says you are, Are you responsible for bringing 50% more money to the table? Are you the capital and so you have to bring 100%? Like, how does this work? Or is it because I already provided the initial capital, so I should provide nothing? These are things that need to be clearly articulated in a JV agreement, because these are the things that will come down on your head, on the joint venture's head, on the asset, and deals go south and partnerships go sour because of these kinds of things, and because these questions are not asked ahead of time. So one, I would say there's a minimum of 25 questions to ask prior to getting into a JV agreement. And then when you have them, it's not simply putting your LLC and the asset address on it and calling it good. You want to have roles and responsibilities. And so you can have a RACI matrix, right? That's like responsible, accountable, coordinated, and informed is the I, right? You want like a whole matrix that's saying like, hey, if this, then that, and who's responsible for this and how, and does this need to be approved or just coordinated or informed? So anyway, there's a whole lot more to it, and you have to think about these things more of marriages than simply something that's just signing a paper and getting money, because
Right.
rarely is it that. So
Okay. And then on average, I mean, when I'm going into, maybe I'm deviating from the conversation, but when I'm going into a partnership on say on an opportunity, how in depth should I get to vet someone out?
yeah, I'd say at a minimum, background, education, experience, assets, income, and credit. Those are the things that, so you can either do that yourself, you can hire it out. I happen to have a service for this called the Investor Passport. And this is where we actually verify previous experience. I do background and credit checks. I
Awesome.
think if you are giving somebody your money, whether or not you think you're loaning it or doing a capital contribution for a partnership, you're giving somebody money to a degree, right? And so you need to make sure that you are securing it and verifying, because you will do a background and credit check it for somebody to go into a negative cash flowing asset or a $100 a month, cash flow asset. Why wouldn't you do that for someone you're going to give 80 to $200,000 to? So
Right. Wow.
background and credit minimum.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, thank you very, very much. I mean, you gave me so much value right there.
Oh
Thank you.
Yeah,
yeah. Oh
awesome.
yeah. Hey Rob, thanks for joining us today, Rob. Mel, I've got a question on that. You know, is this something we need to go to an attorney for to help us as we create this agreement? Is this something that it sounds as you were explaining, can people go to you to get assistance and consultation? What's
Yeah.
the best way for people to gather assistance if they're walking into this for the first or second time, particularly if the first time didn't go well?
Yeah. So I have an AI guide. It is out, but I paused it for a moment because I'm doing some revamping. But it's an informed partner AI guide. And this is taking you not only through the 25 questions that I have in the freebie that you guys can go to my Instagram page and get yourself just by commenting partner. Don't email me for it. Don't ask me for it in DMs. Just comment partner. And so I take not only those 25 questions, but I amplify it and make sure that you're also investing with people whose values align with yours, whose background and strengths and skills are complementary to the ones that you have. Because you want to make sure that when you're getting into these partnerships that you guys are going to be able to elevate each other, right? Not just,
Mhm.
you know, swirl around with the same questions, right? So you want to make sure you're actually complementing one another and building each other up and, having a compatible business and a compatible relationship, because
Sy-
it is a marriage.
Synergy to some extent.
Energy. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Hey,
I ask all of those questions in there, and for you to ask yourself, and I call it an AI guide because I'm giving you prompts to also use ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever your AI
wow.
is of choice, so that you can make sure people get stuck. People get those 25 questions and they're like, I don't know, and I'm not sure how we're supposed to do this. So you can say, hey, we're stuck. Here's what I think. Here's what my partner thinks. Here's what our strengths are. Here's what our weaknesses are, and go from there. And you can get some suggestions and prompts to continue moving forward. Um, so that's a resource, my free resource. You can book a one-on-one call with me. We can do like a half hour or 1 hour strategy session. So there's options. And then to your original question, should you have an attorney? I think you should bring an attorney in after you guys have agreed to all of your terms, after you have come up with a draft of your JV agreement, a draft of your operating agreement, and have them redline it in accordance with the state that you're going to have this effective in. And so that's when you bring an attorney in.
So they review the draft before it becomes finalized.
I think so. I mean, you want to
Yes.
make sure it's in accordance with the state laws that you're working in. And they might have some extra clauses and suggestions, right? Yeah.
You are amazing. You are amazing. Oh, yeah, no, there's tons of knowledge. Guys, if you're on the call, take notes. And again, don't forget to follow her on Instagram and message her on comment on one of her posts with partner. We have another question coming on in. We have Bridget Ruiz on with us. Bridget, you're on with Mel. What's your question?
Hi,
Hi,
Mel.
Bridget.
Hi, JJ. Thank you so much for hosting this, JJ, and Mel. As always, so much appreciation for the value you add and share with all of us. I've I've had experiences now, and what I want to kind of piggyback on was what JJ had shared about, of course, networking, making yourself known, and of course, just getting out there and building those relationships and building your brand. Really, we're
Yeah.
building a brand. And my education continues. I've been in sub 2 for 2 years, and I've skid my knees really hard. I've got lessons that have been learned, and you get up and you just brush off and you got to keep moving forward. And one of the things that exactly just off the shoulders, keep moving, right? What I've As I continue to learn, as I continue to understand how we protect ourselves, I understand that operating agreements is one of the ultimate ways to protect yourself, right? And that when you're putting in, all of your expectations of, how you will be able to get out if something happens, or you take over a property because now all of a sudden you're in that scenario, right? That again, the education continues. But one piece that I thought of is those operating agreements after you put all the details in there and all those expectations. Hope you can't capture all of them, but you're doing your best to capture as much as possible. That documentation, right, has to be executed by both parties, which you can draft it, but that's wonderful unless it's executed. That's the critical step. My question is related to that operating agreement. And when you're signing off on that, does it have to be notarized, or is it just effective to have it executed by both parties?
Yeah, it does not have to be notarized. I will caveat and say maybe there's a state in which it's required, but the general overall advice is no, it does not need to be notarized. Um, but yeah, signed and countersigned. And just for a background, and I won't share too much, but do you mind me sharing just a little bit, Bridget?
Yeah,
Just
of course.
how we
Let's
work
do
together?
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Bridget actually hired me after she already got into a partnership. And one of the early things we realized was money was already transferred, an asset was already purchased, and the operating agreement was not executed, right? And so that's why the signed countersigned part is really important. Not only that, but the LLC wasn't even formed. And so the other thing too is understanding an operating agreement can be created, but the state entity might not exist, right? And so you really need to make sure that the stuff is fully executed prior to wiring funds, because once it's gone, woof. And I learned this mistake myself as well. And, people think I got into due diligence because I was a federal agent, and I repurposed my investigative skills to be preliminary rather than after the fact, because I can do an investigation all day and say my findings, but it doesn't make the money come back, right? And so I like to work on the front end because that's where we can prevent this shit. That's where we can prevent a lot of the painful experiences and lessons learned, because unwinding and untangling that knot and just mess of an experience after the fact is more time, money, and energy. And so anyway, with that, the operating agreement's important, but also just even the original entities are important as well. And an operating agreement can function as a JV agreement. An operating agreement is only required for the entity. And so an agreement is an agreement. and it does need to be executed on both sides. And so just understanding a lot of these differences between JV agreements and operating agreements, and when one is important comes into play or not. Like at the end of the day, you're making agreements with people and you need to make them enforceable. And so that's, what I'll say with that, but you've got some more questions. Yeah.
I do, because what if your partner, and this is where I'm running into these scenarios, what if your partner refuses to do the LLC and they say, oh, it's only a JV by JV agreement per
Yeah.
transaction?
Don't wire the money.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't understand why, if you're going to purchase an asset, you will need to have some sort of LLC. Now, if they say, oh, I want to use mine and I only want it to, financials I get to see, I'm starting to see red flags there, right? Like we have to share. If we're saying we're partners, there's this partnership and sharing of information as well. If that's, in order to protect both parties, it's not just one-sided, it's protecting both.
Transparency. Yeah. A lack of transparency is a major red flag. And that's why, people love the investor passport product because you're leading with transparency. You're just putting it out there and you're saying, hey, here's my background, here's my education, here's my experience, assets, income, and credit. It's all on there for you to peruse. And of course, this is for them to share with you. You're not going to go to my website and get to peruse somebody else's passport unless they've shared it with you, just because that's how I've got it set up. And so if somebody's got it publicly available, because that's how they've chosen to present it, you can find it, but I'm not like hosting a platform in which you can find investors with their investor passport. You make these relationships first and they lead with their passport kind of. But yeah, transparency and lack thereof is a major red flag, and something that unfortunately, once money is wired, as you found out, you kind of lose any leverage for them to comply because you already gave them the money. So they're like, oh, I don't need to do that. Well, shit. My money's gone now. You can force people into quit claim deeds, right? I had $100,000 gone and about $40,000 worth of property that I was able to force these turkeys to quit claim to me. And then I had to spend another 30,000 fixing up the piece of crap, right? And so you need to weigh your options. Oh, not to mention the money that I spent on attorneys and, title and everything else to even get that 40K of property that I had to dump more money into, right? It's not worth a fraction of anything that I spent on it. And so, there's that. And then there's once, loans that are out there and unsecured and tied to assets that they let go into foreclosure. It's just like you've got this floating loan that they're going to pay back, but they're already 2 years overdue, right? And I wish I was speaking hypothetically, but that is my real experience. So
yeah. Could you go into quit claim deeds for the audience, myself included? And then I'll just be quiet. I'm sure others have very important questions as well. Maybe just a little bit more on that. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that if you can get the turkeys to sign, get them to sign. And that's where I was like, look, all the money's gone. You guys aren't doing anything. The property's in worse shape than when we bought it, and you drained the funds for construction, and no construction has been done. So, you're going to give me these properties. That's kind of how that went. And they said, okay, but they could have said no. So there's that too. And so all parties had to sign off on the quitclaim deed, and that's how that worked. So you also don't always want to do a quitclaim deed without a title search, because you don't know if these idiots have put more liens on the property that you are now going to be responsible for when you take it over, because it's just a deed transfer. Okay, so now you got the deed, and now you've also got the liens to go with it. So you got to be careful with quitclaim deeds. People act like these things are a solution. They are an option. They might not be a solution.
Amazing. Amazing.
Right.
Bridget, did she answer your question?
Yes. And I know these are not surface level answers. They're very unique to whatever
Yeah.
state. There's a whole lot to factor in. So these conversations are always very generalized, but enough to help, I think, understand the severity, right, of these transactions and the
huge.
decisions going into it and working with others and so forth. So yeah, this has been super helpful. Thanks, JJ
Yeah, no,
and Mel.
thank you. Great
Thanks.
question. Thank you. Thank you for the value that you bring. Thank you so much. Gail and Victoria, you are on with Mel. What's your question?
This is just slightly off topic, but you might have an answer for it. Lending. We buy rentals and we also fix and flip. And as we're acquiring rentals, seems like the lenders want us to put the stuff in our name. So eventually you get this whacked debt to equity ratio, even though all the properties are making money. Do you know how in the world you get those over to the business name so that
I mean,
you know what I mean?
yeah, I would get a different lender. That's what I would do. I mean, private money is one way. But really there's a lot of DSCR loans that will close in your business entity. There are business use private lenders. If you look at Apple, the American Association of Private Lenders, first of all, they are not private lenders. They all typically have institutional lines of credit, but they are business use loan lenders. And you'll find
Sorry, what
Kiva
was that
there.
again? Apple?
Yep, AAPL, Apple. Um, so if you look at any of their like sponsored members, you'll find Kiva, it's Kiva. They're a big fix and flip or DSCR type lender. I think they primarily do fix and flip. I saw someone in the comments that was um pushing out I think he's a loan officer. And so, there are people out there that will do business loans. You just got to find a different lender, I think. If your DTI is too high and you're running into issues, find a different lender. Hard money lenders typically will close in your LLC and then just require a personal guarantee, which kind of leads into one of the questions
Well, the
that,
good news are traditional banks. And, I think the
oh yeah,
interest
don't do
rates
that.
are nice, but
Yeah.
gosh, eventually you get enough debt in your personal name and it causes issues on the next deal.
Yeah, no mas. You're past that. You can elevate beyond them and find some business lenders.
Carolina Allen, you are on with Mel. What's your question?
Mel, I love what you're doing here. You and I have had conversations offline before, so I'll be a little vulnerable and share. So early 2023, even though we do have experience, we trusted. We lent to an OG leader in one of our communities, and I just want to say, do not use any emotion when you're doing any of these deals, regardless of whether you're wholesaling, lending, whatever the case may be. The numbers tell you what to do, right? So do your processes. I love that Mel is actually making this like a bullet point of what we need to do, because I think sometimes in our communities we're kind of given a high level of what to do, but not really the nitty gritty. And so I love that you're putting together something to protect people. Don't force these deals. Don't trust just because they're highlighted or spotlighted, and take time. I think being a sub two coach myself with the newbies, I see a lot of times they're so hungry to do a deal, right? They want to force it, and I have to get something that there's no timeline. You're putting that pressure on yourself, right? So take the time to fully educate yourself. That is so important. No one is going to protect your money more than you, right?
That's right.
So do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So that's all I wanted to add in there. But thank you, Mel. You're awesome.
Thanks, Carolina. Yeah, Carolina hit on like the FOMO will lose you money. It will lose you energy. You will either get, bankrupt on your account line, or you will get bankrupt on your morals because you're going to work with losers. Okay. When you get FOMO. And somebody who wants to work with you and take your money without making a relationship is also not somebody you want to work with.
That's so key. That's so key. And just to touch on that for a second, I like to say to my group, I'll sell a house to anyone whose money clears escrow. I'll buy a house for anyone where the numbers make sense. But if I'm going to be your joint venture partner or your private money lender, let you be my private money lender. We need to account to one another. Need to make sure that that person has a heart, character, integrity of someone I invite into my home, someone that I trust, someone that I like, that we have personal rapport. Because if not, I'm not doing business with that person, because there's so many people other out, especially my group of 4,500. There's so many other people out there that I know and have a better feel for, that we don't have to do business with people that we don't know, or people that don't care to know us, or people that basically don't even like us. So
Right.
it's the relationship is so important. I just want to throw that in there because what you two are talking about so much weaves into something that I talk about frequently.
Yeah, and people act like just because you're not going to make money tomorrow or just because you're not going to get in this deal this week doesn't mean that you're not going to make money in the future, that you can't you people act as if they lost something, but you can actually lose money getting into these bad deals. You did not lose anything because you didn't, for the most part, 9 times out of 10, people did not verify any of the details. They're investing in the returns. They're not investing in the information. They're not investing in the person. They don't even know whether to verify whether it's a good deal or not, or what a good deal to them is. Because everybody wants to say, what's a good deal to Pace? What's a good deal to JJ? What's Carolina's deal? What's a good deal to you is my question. Like, what do you want? What are your goals? Like, have you asked yourself these questions? Because, and this is something my AI guide goes through. This is something I do with my informed investor lenders that go through my lending like due diligence training program. This is something that I find every one of my passport clients go through this. I think it's so important to really ask yourself these questions because people go, oh, what's your why? What's your why? And you didn't ask the 20 questions to actually get to your answer why. And they'll go, family. Really? Is that it? Why? Let's go 7 layers of this onion. Why? Like, why is your family important? How is your family important? What do you do to show that your family is important? Oh, I work. No, no. Okay. So do you think they want to spend more time? Like, do you brush them off because you're too tired from working all day? Or like we could have a whole Zoom just on values, and how people are incongruent with what they say and what they do. And so that's where I like to start often is because that will save you so much time just hunting after bad deals with, people that might not even be bad, but just not good for you. Like, but also bad people,
Yeah.
probably.
And as you say, bad people, but even if they're not bad people, it's better to find a good fit, right?
That's right. The synergy that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Carolina, did she address, I mean, I know you're making a statement more than a question, but
Yeah, no,
did we
I
cover
just love
that?
everything she's saying. Yeah. I wouldn't say people are bad, but they're creatures of habit, right? And so that's why I love what Mel's doing is she can vet their history, right? Like we don't have access to that, but this amazing, I don't know where you are on the screen, sorry. This amazing woman can
Yeah.
certainly vet that person for you, just like a bank would, right? We're acting like banks, loaning money. What do banks do? They check your credit, they check your history. You have to meet these 20 boxes to get access to their money, right? We should do the same, right? We have to have our lending criteria. So
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop investing in the returns because returns are dreams. Let's invest in reality, which is the information that we have at hand.
Carolina, thank you for joining us and give my best to Steven. I know he's on the call, but give my best. Love you guys. Good to see you.
Love you.
We're rolling into the top of the hour. I know we're going to do some networking breakouts. We got a pretty good sized group on today. Um, Again, paperwork for the beginning investor. What should someone do? Do they have a promissory note? Do they have a personal guarantee? What kind of paperwork should a new investor look to have in place to protect
Yeah.
them? And more importantly, let me ask this one. Say someone gets in second position. Someone else is in first position. In second position, the first position investor is covered by the property itself. What should the second position investor do to cover themselves?
Yeah, so it depends, and it's going to come back to the answers of that. Well, one, what's the structure? Are you in a capital partnership or are you a lender, right? Some people are not lenders. They're not pure lenders, they're capital partners. And so that structure is going to be a little different. And so it always depends. But what I will say is back to your original question, what do they need? They need a promissory note, they need a deed of trust, some sort of security instrument that might be a mortgage, a deed of trust, a security deed, depends on the state, depends on the property, right? Okay, so 1, 2, promissory note, security instrument. 3, PG. If somebody's not going to give you a personal guarantee, like that's not somebody you want to lend to or get into a capital partnership with, period. Then the other ones are going to depend on that structure, right? And so if you're in second position, like this example you're giving, JJ, we're going to want to comp this property and make sure we understand the comparative market analysis and how much this property is actually worth. Because if first position is already taking up 80% of the loan, that 20% really isn't 20% after an auction happens. That's gone. Okay. So
Hmm.
you don't even have that much left. let's talk about cross collateralization. What other assets do they have? Like, is there something else you can tie that security instrument to? That'd be a good idea. But it really depends. That's one example. Um, so other instruments you want or need, depending on the structure, would be a JV agreement or an operating agreement, and those should have a roles and responsibility matrix, right? And so I think we've already talked about 6 things, and it really depends. The layers of protection that you want are really going to be in the terms of the agreement and how enforceable you make them. And so if you don't understand the agreements that you're getting into, this is where you hire professional services. And this is the whole reason why I created this service, because
Good for you.
people jump into them. Just, you don't know what you don't know, and you won't find out until things go wrong.
Mhm.
Really.
And that's kind of position I'm in. But so this is a service you provide. We can come to you, and later at the end of the call, we ask how to contact you. We would be able to have you available as a resource to help those that are looking to lend and what questions they may have. You know, a situation, I'll just say that I'm in, and thank goodness it's not for a lot of money, but an individual had borrowed $20,000 and putting my partner on second position. And unbeknownst to us, and unbeknownst to the third and fourth person, he had a person in third position, fourth position, and
Mm,
this individual took in more money than the property was worth. So
yep.
are there ways to sidestep that or do research to find out that what's going on? I mean, especially say there's 2 people in and he's going to someone for a third, telling them they're in second.
Yikes. Yeah, and so that comes back to, so all my informed investors, I provide a lot of clauses and things that you want to make sure you're protecting yourself in your promissory note, in your JV agreement, in these documents that you're creating. Even your like I in the application process, there's so many things you want to put in there. As an investigator, I like to establish a criminal case file, even if you don't have a crime. Okay. And so you want to establish all of this paperwork ahead of time so that if something goes wrong, you have something to beat them over the head with. Because
Yeah.
after money's already gone, after agreements are already made and clauses don't exist, and you don't have all these terms and conditions that are really the teeth that you can do anything with, there's really not a lot you can do. You just have to try to force them into loan modifications and, new agreements, and, serve them if there's anything that they have violated in the terms of the agreement. You can call the loan due, right? There's things that you can do, but once you're in the second, third position stuff, it gets really messy because you need to have very clearly articulated agreements. And so nothing we could cover in 15 minutes, but I do have an
Course
entire
not. Yeah.
6-month program that I work with people to help them develop these kinds of I don't like tools in a toolbox because you only use tools when things are broken or for specific use. I like the term practices so that you create these systems, these processes, and you use them as a practice, as a standard, so that you can create safe agreements and safe partnerships and
Oh
make
my
some money,
gosh.
not lose it.
You are a true blessing. You really are, because so many people are, Carolina made a really good statement, lending on emotion. There was someone that was a friend of mine, probably like they still is a friend of mine from my prior education group, and he needed a lot amount of money larger than the first amount that I had mentioned. And it was for a legal transaction, not even a real estate issue. And I lent him some money on the premise I'd see it in 6 months. It's been over a year. And there's really no collateral, and I'm now on a trust basis.
Yeah,
And so we make mistakes based upon trusting people and not
totally.
realizing that when we're dealing with money, guys, it's a business. And so you need to watch out for yourself. You need to protect yourself. Had I known that Mel was available, 2 years ago, she probably would have saved me a lot of money. Whatever costs you need to pay to ensure that you have the guidance and support to protect your deals is part of the cost of doing business.
Totally.
So you need to take that on. Now we're wrapping up. We're going to go to the breakout room shortly, but I've got 2 last questions for you.
Sure.
One, if people want to connect with you down the line, they have questions. Well, one, do you have a book out or anything, or? Are you
No,
coaching? You do have a company and a service you provide.
I do. Capital Verified is my business, and I offer my due diligence consulting services there. So yeah, you can get started several ways. If you scroll down, those are like the 5 services that I have. And if you keep scrolling down, you can actually get started straight from here. So there's the investor passport, there's due diligence, we've got consulting, the one-on-one consulting or records checks. So that's how you can work with me. And then if you just want to follow me and get some of my free education that I offer, I've got my social media where I post stuff.
And then, of course, if anyone's looking to connect with you, you'd like them to open up one of the posts and just comment in what was partner. Is that correct?
That's right. So if you want that free guide to 25 questions to ask before getting into a JV agreement, that will send you a DM in a little bit, and it'll give you a link to download that guide.
Fantastic. You've been absolutely amazing. Hey, I've got one last question for you. I'm always talking about networking, and with networking, it's building relationships and getting to know people. The important, of so many education groups out there. I know in my group alone, I've got people from over 50 education groups. And there are people joining all of these education groups every single day. Some of them are brand new investors. Some of them are seasoned. They might be brokers or agents or even seasoned investors, but they're coming to these education groups for the first time, joining their Facebook community because that's part of the deal of joining the educational platform and having the access to use social media to build their business, or literally 90% of them don't. They're not leveraging social media. What is the importance of leveraging social media, networking, being visible to the new, much less a seasoned investor? How important is that?
It is your storefront. So if you're not telling people what you're doing, nobody has the opportunity to know you. And when we go back to that know, like, and trust, though I am very anti know, like, and trust as a foundation, I am know, like, and trust as far as building relationships.
Yes.
That's absolutely important. If you are sliding into people's DMs asking them for something and you do not have a relationship with them, you need to back up. You should be leading with your credit card if that's how you want to work with people, because you either establish that relationship, that know, like, and trust before you need something, or you lead with that credit card. So there's time, money, and skills. And if you're not providing, you know, if you're not providing skills or time, and time that they actually want, right? Like, you better be leading with that money. And so I think building the relationships is so critical to lead with your what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for. And then people can get to know, like, and trust you. It's an
There you
easy
go.
way to passively shop around for friends,
There you
right?
go. Hey, so, another side step, almost the same question, but my group is a networking group. I'm trying to teach people how to network, how to brand, how to be visible. Do you suggest that investors join a group like mine? Because we don't teach cold calling. We're not short sales. We're not raising private money. We're not commercial or multifamily. We're purely about building networks, about building relationships, and about building our visibility. Would you recommend to new students to join a group like mine?
Yeah, so I think people always need to understand who they're trying to work with, like who you're trying to build relationships with. And so, a group like yours is really important. If you're specifically looking to invest with other women, you should probably find a women's investor networking group. If you're specifically looking to invest with people in your market, look for your market,
Yeah.
and think about, and being strategic about your relationship building, because I think you mentioned it before, JJ, is like, the 5 to 6 people that you're working with are going to be the most influential in your daily life. And I actually say 3 to 5 people. So the 3 to 5 people you spend the most time with are going to be what you are the average of. And if you are just spaghetti on the wall, making 50 friends with 50, friends, like, are you
Yeah.
really? And so invest you have a finite amount of time. We all have 24 hours in a day. And so, be strategic about these groups that you're joining and the relationships that you're
Yeah.
building, because that will help you try to get where you're going, or maybe you're lost. And
Yeah.
these other people can serve as some guiding stars for you in a little bit while you're like a little bit lost at sea trying to find some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Trying to find like-minded people and surround yourself with people just like you.
That's
I
right.
really, you have been absolutely amazing. I have to say, it's probably one of the, if not the most valuable call that we've ever had, a guest speaker. Um, I see why everybody raves about you now and getting more of a personal interaction with you. I thank you so much for being on the call today.
Thanks for
Um,
having me, JJ.
if you guys are watching on YouTube right now, please like Mel's video. Please put your comments in your suggestions, comments in the little comment section, your takeaways, what you like, what you found informative. Again, if you'd like to connect with her, guys, don't forget the best way to connect is going to be through her Instagram. You can message her there, and then of course on her website, which is
It can be capitalverified.com or cardinal-creative.com. Both work.
there you go, cardinalcreativeinvestments.com, cardinal-creative.com. But please reach out to her because it's so important, so important. I call it the handgun umbrella shotgun rule. Better to have it not needed than need to not have it. Better to see what your options are, what your resources are, and how to protect yourself before you're in trouble than afterwards you find you're in trouble and you could have saved yourself a mountain of headache. Not be out 10, 20, 30, $50,000 for maybe $1,000 investment.
Yeah. An
Um,
ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure.
yeah, pound a cure. If you guys want to connect with me, get on my Zoom calls, get on my networking group. Let me help you with your brand, your visibility, your networking. Scan the turquoise QR code here, take you to my website. Click the pulsating register now button. If you want to follow our guest speakers, see a lot of what more we've done on our Zoom calls, uh, scan the purple QR code, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Uh, on behalf of Mel and myself, want to thank you guys for joining us. If you're on the call, guys, don't go away. We're going to have a little bit more one-on-one with Mel. Mel, as far as everybody else, we'll see them out there in the world of virtual networking, right?
That's right.
See you guys soon. Thank you so much, folks.